Hello and welcome to the MEA edition of the Top 100 LinkedIn Live panel discussions. My name is Catherine King and I'm the Director for the Business here at Corinium, and I will be co-hosting today's discussion. Thank you so much for joining us. Over the next 45 minutes, we will be sitting down with several of our top 100 members from the MEA region who were recently featured within Corinium's Top 100 Innovators in Data and Analytics 2022 list. Now, if you've not yet seen who else is featured, you can download your copy of the report right now. It is within the event description. Now, my first guest, who I am delighted to bring up to the virtual stage, is one of our Global Advisory Board members, Dirk Youngnickel, who was instrumental in forming the Top 100 along with our other 25 members of the Advisory Board. Now, you'll notice if you click onto our Advisory Board, we have a few more members since, but it was the original 25 who helped form this year's Top 100. Dirk, thank you for joining me today. A quick intro, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, my name is Dirk Youngnickel, and I'm heading the Enterprise Data and Analytics function for the Emirates Group in the UAE in Dubai, which comprises Emirates Airlines, which I guess many people know, and then the NATA Group, but it's mostly around all aviation and travel. Have been doing this for 3.5 years, have a background in a couple of different fields, but mostly in the last 10 years, I guess, everything around data and analytics.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for helping me co-host today as well. Now, forming a list like this is hard work, so we were so glad to have our Global Advisory Board involved. But I would love, before we get into the main discussion here, just to understand from you why you think a list like the Top 100 is so important for our data and analytics community.
Yeah, I think in the community, I mean, one of the most important things, of course, is knowledge sharing, experience sharing. There is always an enormous amount of insight to be gained by just discussing with peers and with other people, in particular, people who have been very, very good in innovating in their space, what they have come across, what the challenges were they faced or are facing, exchange possible ideas about solutions and all of this. It's a so rapidly evolving field. The technology is changing, the operating models are changing very, very quickly. The data landscape is changing. So this kind of exchange, I think, with highly qualified and very innovative people, I mean, at least for me personally, is absolutely essential. And I usually benefit a lot, and I hopefully can also contribute, of course, myself a little bit to other people in the same way and the challenges they face. And it's another aspect which, of course, I think also has been a main driver for the advisory board itself and also for the top 100 is diversity. So it's not, I mean, of course, I'm in touch with people in my own industry and maybe geographically in the same country at least, but exchanging ideas and exchanging these things with people from completely different industries, sometimes academia, sometimes from the private sector, non-profit, governmental institutions. And also with very different focus areas. I mean, some people are very focused on data governance challenges, others are rolling out AI capabilities. This is super enriching and super useful, I think, for everybody who's involved.
I couldn't agree more, especially on that point about diversity from every aspect. It is a pleasure to bring people together. And on that lovely tangent, shall we bring together our MEA Top 100, a few of the members joining. So I'm going to bring you all up to the virtual stage. Thank you, each of you, for giving us some of your time today. We're really excited over the next 40 minutes or so to dive into some of the big questions that Dirk and I have prepared for you. But just before we jump into that, I think a quick round of introductions is in order. Jawad, I'm going to pick on you first, if you wouldn't mind giving us an intro.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Catherine, for having me today. I think I'm very honored to be here. And hello to all the panelists. As an introduction, I head up big data, AI, and data analytics for Mizan Bank, which is a top 4 bank in the country. As a background, I wear multiple hats. I'm a CA and a CPA, licensed in Canada and studied in Canada. So I can sign off on companies on the NASDAQ and NYSE. I've worked about 8 years in London. So my other hat is consultancy and investment banking. And then in the last 5 years, I moved into Pakistan, where I head up and I've built up a greenfield AI and data analytics team for the bank. And we've been quite successful, touch wood, so far in installing it from zero to where we have a few 4 live use cases working for the bank in production. And so that's what I want to come bring to the party today that we're going to discuss.
Thanks so much, Jawad. Shreya, great to see you. If you wouldn't mind giving an intro.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Shreya Goswami. I work for Microsoft, Middle East and Africa, Azure. So yes, it's been a tremendous journey, having worked in financial services and now working for a technology organization and helping chief data officers across industries on their digital transformation journey. So lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you. Maritza, great to see you. An intro, if you wouldn't mind.
Hello everyone, I'm Maritza Curry. I'm the head of data for BNP Paribas Personal Finance South Africa, where we trade as RCS Group, and we are responsible for data governance, data management, and enterprise data analytics.
Thank you, Maritza. And then last but certainly not least, Paul, if you wouldn't mind giving an intro.
Sure. Thanks, Kath. Thanks for having us here today, and welcome to all the other panelists. So I'm Paul Morley. I work for a top 4 bank in South Africa called Nedbank. I'm responsible for enterprise data operations and regulatory reporting. So all things data that the bank uses, I'm the front line of data in Nedbank, be it platform systems, cloud, analytics, regulatory reporting, and I'm also the ambassador to the regulator for data and all things data with our regulators. So that's me, Paul.
Thank you so much. And thank you to each of you for giving us some of your very precious, given how busy you are just in those introductions, time to talk about these topics. So the first question I wanted to ask and kick off with, on the face of it, can seem quite a simple question, but actually, as we dive into it, I think there may be some differing opinions on this. And my first question is, what do you think it takes to be a successful data leader in 2022? Maritza, I'll go to you first for that one.
Sure, quite a difficult question. For me, there's 3 things. The first thing is that you have to be able to very clearly articulate and drive a shared data vision in your organization. And that's at all levels, executive, strategic, operational, etc. Very closely linked with that is resilience, because inherent to data strategies is data transformation, is change. And not everyone reacts to change in the same way. So you do run into resistance, and you have to be able to manage through that change. And then lastly, also related, is you have to be able to build communities, because data strategies are it takes a lot of effort, and no one can do it on their own. So you have to build communities and partnerships within your organization and even in your business network to be successful.
Thank you so much, Maritza. It makes me think, obviously, earlier in the year, we had a fantastic panel discussion on lessons learned. And I know you can't do it alone, or don't do it alone. We're certainly one of your main lessons there. So it doesn't surprise
Yes, that's
me
right.
that
Yes.
it makes up your successful data leader in 2022 outlook as well. Jawad, how about yourself? What does it take to be a successful data leader in 2022?
I think what Maritza said resounds quite significantly in our journey here. And we've done all of those things as part of our journey. What we label our strategy is data democratization, and we try to give the power of data in the hands of the users. Fundamentally, the people who have the data or custodian of the data are not the same as the one who have the domain knowledge. So once you install the infrastructures, you should give the power of compute, give the power of analytics to the hands of the users. That's one. That's just saying the same thing as Maritza is saying, but it's just in a different way, in a very practical way. The second thing that we focus on, again, Maritza, following up on Maritza, what we do is after we've delivered the project successfully, you have to convert yourselves into a deployment manager, because a successful project does not necessarily bring successful value. Bringing value is post-project implementation. So you have to get down after you've done your project installations, made your use cases and machine learning projects, is to get down, be the deployment manager, and sit with your users so you can extract the maximum value out of it. And that's what we've been doing in the last year and a half. So that's, again, focusing on the people, not on the systems, once you've installed all your systems. So that's successful. And so in 2022, what we are focusing now is on capacity and capability building, because the human element of success is huge when you come to deliver data project. And the punchline that I go with is culture eats strategy for lunch. So no matter how good of a system you have, state of the art, how good your data is or your machine learning model prediction is, if the user is unwilling and to make it part of their strategies or they're part of their business model or operating models, you're not going to get the value, and ultimately everything will come tumbling down. So that culture part is very, very hard to change. It takes a lot of time and effort, and I think the top guy in data has to drive that within the organization as a big pillar of the strategy.
Absolutely. It doesn't surprise me that value is already forming part of this discussion here today. Thank you, Jawad. Paul, how about yourself? Successful data thing.
I think I'll go with some of what Maritza was saying, and I do share a lot of her views on this. So for me, there's three real pillars. There is resilience, and I think I absolutely believe that resilience is going to be key in the future with this rapid change, evolution of change, and and the way the world is going. Resilience is vital. If you can't be resilient and adaptable, I think you're going to find yourself on the short leg. Next to that, I believe curiosity, creativity, I think is you've got to be curious in the data domain. I mean, the entire purpose around being in data is to find the nuggets, find the signal in the noise. So having a curious mind or a creative mind is going to be vital. So resilience, curiosity, and then again, empathetic. Be empathetic. It must be a strong driver in one's psyche is empathetic, because again, and I think Jawad mentioned it, and if you're going to go in and make changes, and Maritz also said it, if you're going to drive a change in an organization, if you're going to drive transformation, you've got to have a strong empathetic side, because these are tough conversations, and in some cases they can affect people's livelihood. In some cases they're going to have to be retrained, and people don't like change. So being empathetic, creative, resilient are my top three dimensions for a leader in the 22nd century. Yes.
Thanks so much, Paul. Shreya, how about your thoughts on this?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is you have to be a very strong coach, because you had to coach your leadership, the board, the executives about what is this whole data-led digital transformation is all about. So I think that level of patience, Paul mentioned resilience, adaptability, and constantly imparting that knowledge to various people in the organization, almost tirelessly, and be used to repeating yourself is something that is a non-negotiable, because often we find chief data officers get tired very easily about I don't think people understand the strategy. I think there is a lot of enthusiasm about we are going to be data-led, digitally transformed, but that doesn't happen, and it's normal because it's still new to a lot of our executives, and it's all right. So we have to have that patience to be constant coach at all levels of the organizations. Of course, domain expert. I think if you are in FSI or in energy or in retail, to know your domain is super critical. So know your domain well, and then see what technology may work for you end to end. Don't go after technology and then try and retrofit it. I think it's important to understand your industry well, and then see how you can then solution that end to end. And again, I think this is one that, again, Paul mentioned: growth mindset, learning, adaptability. You have to be so open to learning continuously, because the change is so fast in this space. There's so many new technologies, new products, new services that are coming up. So be open-minded, have a growth mindset, and keep learning.
Love that as a call to action for our audience today. Keep learning. Dirk, before I pass to you to ask your first question, I'd actually like to know your thoughts on this, what it takes to be a successful leader.
Well, in fact, I mean, I heard some very, very good and answers I could wholeheartedly agree with, in particular around the change management capabilities that a good leader has to have. I had a question prepared around this, so I can probably save the time and not ask it, because that is one of the key success factors as far as I'm concerned. It really is driving change across an organization. The best solutions don't do anything if nobody is going to use them, or people don't even understand the value that comes out of it. And so that would be one comment. The only thing I would probably add is that from my experience, that one of the big challenges even of being a good data leader, and I hope I am one, is also the amount of data and analytics knowledge that is required nowadays is far more complex than what it used to be maybe 15, 20 years ago. So I mean, when at times when there was a little bit of data warehousing and BI, how to build reports and dashboards, and that's pretty much where it stopped. So now it ranges from very complex technological developments. We need to understand the architecture of a good data platform stack, an analytics stack, including AI capabilities. Just on the data side, many, many different technologies out there, how you transform data, how you persist data. Then when it comes to machine learning and AI, enormous amounts of developments in the algorithmic space. And then the next question, how do you get all of this stuff into production, manage that properly in live? So the complexity has exploded. And in addition to that, the requirement that you have to understand your business very well, the business domain, and be a change agent. So I think the job is very, very demanding in a way in terms of the breadth of the skill set that is required in order to be successful. So it's probably one of the points I would add. Then when, I mean, maybe regarding the change agent part in particular, one of the things I observed at least is that it's very easy to get people excited about AI, machine learning. Everybody wants to do this in a way. So kind of lip service is relatively easy to achieve. Getting people to understand what it actually takes to get there is a completely different story. But one very specific challenge I've faced all my life, as long as I've been working in this industry, is that people very often confuse the availability of good information, like a report or a dashboard, with good decisions. In the end, data analytics is all about support for quantitative decision making. And if I want to be provocative about this, what I've seen very often is that this is being used in order to drive, you can say, data-enabled jumping to conclusions. So there is a huge difference between good BI and good decision-making. And bridging that gap is one of the biggest challenges, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to change management and driving adoption in an organization. So it probably wraps it up where I see the challenges, at least from my own experience. What somehow links to this, of course, is that, I mean, I have a question, if I may ask a question now to the panel, because I would like to hear people's views. I mean, very differently, let's say, from many other functions which you find in many organizations like sales, marketing, finance. There is not this kind of blueprint, textbook standard how you organize for data and analytics capabilities. Some companies install a chief data officer, a chief analytics officer. Some organizations put the whole thing in IT and say this is primarily some engineering challenge. Others have it completely fragmented. The next company tries to centralize it. So I'd be very interested in hearing some views from the panel. I mean, what have you seen working? What have you seen not working? And where are the success factors in organizing for success in any organization in principle?
I'll give it a go, or start us off. So where I have seen, if we are talking about specifically structuring your data and analytics center of excellence, and what's better, centralized versus decentralized versus federated. I think where I have seen failure is where an organization tried to follow some cookie cutter, um, you know, vendor-led situation. Where it has worked is where the organization had a very clear view of where they were in terms of their data analytics maturity and where they wanted to end up, and where they had a very strong, very clear data strategy. Because if you have that, if you know what capabilities you are building, whether those are technical capabilities or people capabilities, then you know what you need and how you need to structure yourself. So I would say it really depends on the organization and your maturity. And I would also argue that you don't have to lock yourself into a specific structure from the start. You could start with a centralized structure, for example, if you have quite a low maturity, and then mature over time into something that's more decentralized or federated. So it really depends on the organization.
Yeah, 100%, Kath. And I think Maritza hit the nail on the head. There's no answer to this question. There's no right answer to the question, and there's no wrong answer. Every organization is different. It's got a different structure, different culture, different language, different people, different context, different. Everything's different. Every country, every company is uniquely different in that sense. So there is no, and likewise with titles. Some call it CDO. Dick was talking about. Some days it's a chief of, analytics, or it really doesn't matter, and it also doesn't matter where it sits. Some people get into this mindless debate. It should sit in IT. No, it should sit in business. No, it should sit in group. And it really doesn't matter. The point is purpose. Do you know what your purpose is? Do you know where your vision is leading you to? Do you understand what you want? Do you understand your strategy? It'll fit wherever it needs to fit. I mean, there's no answer to this question. So, and I think the only outcome is success. So if it doesn't work one way, change it until it works, and keep on iterating until we find a model that does work. So we should stop. I always say to my colleagues, we should stop debating academics in data. It frustrates the heck out of me. We're too academical sometimes, but we just don't get down. It'll be what it will be. Okay, and there's no right exam answer to this question.
Couldn't agree more. I love your points around purpose, Paul. I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can I answer this?
Sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
Sure. Thank you. Now, I think the one point that I'd like to add to what Paul and Maritza have said, I think they have covered predominantly everything, but at a group level, data needs to have a seat. Let's not dilute it under technology or chief operations officer, because that's where we lose it. The importance of data as a critical asset to an organization gets diluted. Like you have a group chief financial officer, CMO, CTO, we should have a CDO. So at a group level, if the organizations are mature enough and bold enough to give data a seat at the table, underneath, depending on the maturity, it can be federated, centralized, or a combination of the two. So that would be an additional point that I'd like to build on. Yeah.
Okay, can I jump in? I'll just give you some real life tips and examples that have worked for us. In terms of change of culture, even before we installed the project, we launched something called the Data Super League. What we did, we installed users in every data users, which we call data champions, in each single business unit. And we asked them to give us a use case that can utilize big data and AI. This was actually getting all the organization excited and also make them learn about what data strategies we were trying to bring into the organization. That did a lot of good to us. And these guys are still with us 4 years later, 3.5 years later, also talking